I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. Today is Friday, October 7th, 2022. First of all, let me welcome my writing partner and co-host, Brenda Lyle-Gray. She joins me every day from the mountains of New Mexico. Brenda, how you doing?
I'm fine. How are you, Al?
I am well. I am well. Great show yesterday. Great shows all week, actually. We're covering a lot of ground. Today won't be an exception. Dr. B and Dr. Oliver both called and are unable to be here today. So I reached out as my mind and spirit are focused on this whole question of healing. And I thought that it would be awesome to talk to healers in our community, other healers, and who came to mind, both uh, Mother Atum Azahir, I may be saying the name improperly, she'll correct me, and her son, my friend, Anthony Taylor. Atum has created the Cultural Wellness Center, and it's an enterprise that deals with an Africana way of knowledge, of knowing, of doing, of being, of becoming, that focuses on health, but also not a limited vision or version of health, an expansive, complete, holistic notion of what health means and what we should.
She was one of the first ones I wrote on 2 years ago,
Aha.
and she blew my mind. I had never heard layers of knowledge that just stacked.
Well,
You think talking to Mahmoud
Al-Qadi,
I can never
yeah.
get it out. But boy, the two of them, it's like, wow.
Well, hold on to your seat because here we go
I
again. That's what I
know.
guarantee you. And then Anthony, you've talked to Anthony before. Anthony is a diamond, a jewel in his own right. But
The
he's
bicycler.
well, and more. I mean, he's just a person who understands and knows, and is an embodiment of the earth itself and our relationship to it, and not just the earth, but the things around the earth. So he lives and walks and reflects the connectedness of our existence. And I'm always glad to talk to him. Well, let's bring in Mother Atum, first of all, and when Anthony is available, he'll join the conversation. Good afternoon. Welcome to the conversation.
Good afternoon. I am really deeply honored to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Absolutely, and thank you. And typically what we've done is started off with a protocol, but I'm going to shift that to you today. When you open the meeting up in community or in the wellness center, how typically do you open the meeting? Is there an Africana strategy, a protocol that you employ to begin and to center a conversation and activity? If there is, I want to ask you to do that right now.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Al and Sister Brenda. I consider you both co-elders, and we have been together in many locations, many times. The first thing I want to say is, may the ancestors guide what I say to you and what you say to me. The work of the ancestors is work that is once again relevant. It is once again the biggest kind of foundation on which we can stand to reach and be in alignment with the voice, the spirit, and the knowledge of the Creator. So I say a ceremony that is what I know to be and have learned to be and have permission to be called the opening of the mouth ceremony. Out of the noon, which is the primordial waters, comes a tomb, which is the separation and completion at one and the same time. Then comes fire and water, also known as Shu, also known as Tefnut. Then comes Geb and Nut, which is the earth and the heavens, bringing into existence the Black man and the Black woman. Then there is this amazing a sar and a set, which is a masculine and feminine in creation that has to be remembered, has to be brought back together in a particular way to face the conflict, to face the contradictions, to face the challenge on the rightness and order in creation. These are the systems, these are the divine principles that take us to what we pursue as a perfected state in the Kemetic tradition is called, also known as here. The African has continued to know the Creator through this seeking of perfection in alignment with how the Creator and the creation should interact. And then I say to you, in the spirit of transformation, being and becoming, Hotep, I wish you freedom, rest, and peace. Hotep.
Amazing, Hotep. And the response that I have gained is Ankh Uja Sanab. And Ankh Uja Sanab, if I'm correct, stand for wishing you peace, happiness, and what's the other one?
Life. Ankh is life.
Life is first. Ankh is life. So, Uja is health, and the third one is prosperity.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is wonderful. And it's wonderful to have this exchange, this experience, this teaching. Thank you for sharing and teaching, Mother Atum.
Beautiful.
How do we bring this introduction, this protocol for every interaction where it's appropriate broadly into our community? I think that teaching, training are critical and essential, and teaching and training prepare us for and enable us to be focused on the transformation that's internal and external at the same time. How do we broaden both awareness and engagement around this process, this protocol? What do you think?
Well, I think as you know, the work we do around cultural wellness came into existence as we began to find ourselves, as we began to remember ourselves, as we began to acknowledge the shedding of tears that hasn't happened, that the tears we have not shed, that the pain we have not been acknowledged for, nor have we acknowledged. That pain and suffering is actually knowledge. So it's a way of knowing how to survive, how to be, how to become. So the thing that I really encourage and I really attempt very much to do is to, when people say to us, keep it real, I say first to acknowledge what you feel, sense, and see. So if you get up in the morning and you realize, I am awake, I am sitting or standing or feeling again, and for this I am grateful. I am, as many people say, I am as I am, that the African will often say, I am. And there's no further thing to say, just I am. So we have practices currently that we have not identified as sacred. And I am more and more understanding that when we say keep it real, what we mean is do not put it inside of a text that we don't know how to read. Mm-hmm. Do not put it inside of an institutional form that we don't really and truly have any history of accessing. Do not put it inside of a book that at this point in time, we have to read someone else's book. And so what I think of is that we are the book, that we look in the mirror and read this book What am I saying back to myself? What is the knowledge I bring from my experiences? What are the ways that I have survived that need to be celebrated? And most importantly, do I need to forgive myself for something? Do I need to free myself from something? So, cultural wellness is this approach to freeing myself, my soul, and reconnecting constantly to the soul that the African never lost contact with in the first place. So that's how we keep it real is you have survived. You deserve celebrating. So celebrate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You deserve to be, as a matter of fact, often people will copy the African in many, many, many places and ways. We are copied. People listen to us and say what we say, do what we do, look as we look. That's an indicator that we bring to the planet that which is valued and valuable. Let us celebrate that on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
Celebrate the power of your appearance. Celebrate the blackness in the heavens. In the middle of the night, there is light, enlightenment. And right now, blackness is, as a matter of fact, enlightenment. So that's kind of how we do our ceremony is make it very, very basic, essential, and inclusive of yourself and your ways.
Talk about the Ma'at sisters uh, and the work of Asar in the grounding story of creation.
Well, brother, it's I mentioned earlier Asar and the set, and we have, as you know, the privilege of having a teaching and a teacher, Seba Ahmed, a Zahir, who has studied Kemet extensively. And part of what the books of Kefra, it's like 3 books of Kefra, has described in relationship to Asar and the Set. Asar, once again, I'm going to say, achieved the status of being the keeper of the underworld through the lost members that happened with what's called Seth. Seth is this. I referred before to this contradictory
Mm-hmm.
principle, or this conflicting principle that conflicts with the perfect. So Asar was cut into many, many parts, 14 different parts, and spread across the planet by Seth in an attempt to, number one, through Seth's perception, which turned into jealousy and envy toward the beauty of Asar. So the beauty was to be envied and to be challenged, and for the most part to be denied any kind of power and relevance. And so that denial forced Seth then, or I would say drove Seth then, to attempt to destroy Asar. They don't talk so much about killing as much as destroy.
Hmm.
So this destructive force cuts this Asar into these 14 different parts and spread it across the planet. Aset, it's Asar and the Set, who is both the sister, the wife, in my perception, the mother, the woman, woman as in the feminine principle in creation that brings all things back together. So a set found every single piece, and often it's talked about the one piece that was left. And we think about the ideas that we are now struggling with, having to do with the masculine and feminine in creation, but also the way the literal interpretation of man and woman and this kind of sexualization of gender, that in the ancient Kemetic tradition, it wasn't a literal interpretation as a spiritual interpretation, an interpretation that had to do with the sacred knowledge. So the masculine and feminine was a complementarity that fit together as we think now, without any separation. And so this Asar and the Set principle was such a complement to each and all, not just to each, but to all. So that complementarity had to be at the base and the core of a set's pursuit, of a set's search, of a set's examination of where could this possibly be hidden? Where could this possibly have gone? And can I restore and remember? You know what's powerful is a set then turned to Nephet. Nephet, the sister, the kind of almost like the lord of the house, this sister, that sister, Nephet and Aset come together. And sometimes I talk about the tears of Aset, or the tears of in other kind of knowledge, scholarship might refer to Aset as Isis. The tears of Aset is also connected to the Nile, you know, the amazing coming of the seasons with the tears, the waters that flow. And so bringing back together all of those pieces. And the other thing about it is it's connected to then the moon also, with the 28 days, the 14 days, and right now we are tomorrow or today in the full moon. So the fullness of the moon, the connection of the moon cycles, and the connection of all that is involved in this story of Asar and the Set and Nephet, coming together, the Asar principle, the Set principle in disharmony, and then the Aset and Nephet principle harmonizing through tears, through remembering, through moving across the planet to find every single part, no matter where it was hidden. Bringing it together like the brother, the sister, the mother, bringing it together like the wife, and then putting this together to give birth to an amazing principle that then stands at the door of the underworld. If you enter into the underworld, you will then encounter, once again, the Asar principle that gives us the knowledge, the capacity to look at our lives, to look at our being, to look at our statements of and expressions of staying in alignment with the Creator, to look at that with us. And the final piece of it for me has been the power of the weighing of the heart then, and the power, of the weighing of the heart on this scale. One is scaled as the heart, the other is the feather. The feather is the representation or the symbol for Ma'at, this idea of the principles of Ma'at that give us, once again, a sense of order, reciprocity, truth. It gives us a sense of propriety, justice, harmony. So those are the principles. Once again, there are 7 principles, and all of that then is what I think of as the practice of the Asar, the Aset legend. For us, especially those of us of African heritage who are returning and taking back ourselves, putting ourselves in the kind of place and state of being in alignment with the Creator and with the journey of the soul.
You and I, Atum, worked on a DNA project almost 20 years ago, where the DNA technology was emerging, and you led the creation of a colloquium, I think a discussion at the University of Minnesota. The question on the table was the value and the challenges of examining that arena of technology and knowledge, to not be misled, but to use discoveries in the most appropriate way to advance our sense of self, our sense of our humanity, and to use as tools to continue to co-create futures that represent the best of our possibilities. Any reflections on that now, 20 years later? And what are your thoughts?
Wow. That is such a great question. The professor his last name was Little. He was Howard University.
Rick Kittles from
Rick Kittles, yes.
Yeah. Dr. Kittles, yeah.
Yes, he was the first to have started this idea, the pursuit of the African in America in particular, looking at using the technology to determine our origins or our heritage, or at this time, our lifeline, or all of that. And we had the amazing, you're absolutely right, it was an unheard of community university partnership where we brought the speakers, himself included, into the university and brought community people to really ask ourselves the questions: who are we and who are our people? The Cultural Wellness Center began that process of who are we? Who are our people? And what does it matter anyway? The other thing we wanted to know is, with the knowledge we have of how our heritage was disconnected and cut on purpose, through the taking away of our names, taking away of our language, taking away our capacity to track through any kind of literal documentation. So you could not find what village, what tribe, what group on the continent of Africa. Lots of people talked about West Africa. Yes. Lots of people talked especially about the West African communities that have, whether it's Yoruba or other kind of religious practices that we would identify with. And we would identify with it not because of it giving us a sense of heritage on a physical level, but a sense of knowledge, spiritual connection on the level of a thinking process that has less to do with who you think I am physically as who I know I am from my soul forward. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this very powerful experience,
deep intuition, an inward inner knowing.
That there's no way for you to find it anyway. It's not documentable. However, what we were able to show then, and we continue with our cultural wellness approach, is that we must go to the continent of Africa, whichever village location we go to. That it isn't so much that we're going to learn the language, or we're going to learn the village, or we're going to learn the tribal connection. But when you walk into the space, you will feel a sense of wholeness. a sense of groundedness, a sense of belonging. If you don't open your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, sometimes the disconnect happens when you open your mouth.
Right.
And people identify us with only being able to speak English.
Mm-hmm.
But English as a language, as we were able to show, and other colonized languages that was forced by the colonizer, the language itself disconnected us often from a knowing. So what we were able to show is that you may do the genealogical, exploration, you may do that, but what it's going to give you is a continued physical yes, and a geographical yes, and a tribal yes, or an ethnic group or yes. Those will give you that kind of identity, but the identity will come from the heart, from the soul of the African, from the connection that we can make when we look in the eyes of those who are saying to us, you, my brother, have returned. You, my sister, my mother, have returned. So that tree of no return did not work because you're here.
Mm-hmm.
That's the teaching that the Cultural Wellness Center tried to promote and bring. And it was quite an academic challenge for us because the scholars who do the work from a different place and a different point of view, they did challenge us. But in the end, they also respected us for standing on a ground that has to do with cultural ways of knowing, cultural survival, cultural endurance, that really has much more to do with our cognitive process, how we think and how we know what we know, how we think Black. That's the work that we have continued to show is still in existence and must be there for us as a people. And it was supported by the scholars, ultimately, who were with us at that point. So I appreciate you asking that question. I hadn't thought about it for a really long time, but I still have the documents. It's very powerful.
And I have the tapes, and from time to time I have the a set of, I think, cassette tapes from those seminars and presentations that eventually I'll get them transcribed. I think it was an important set of conversations.
Very, very important.
And we were way ahead of everything in examining, the challenge and the opportunity to create, explore, and develop knowledge around the way of knowing. Yes. So let me bring in Anthony Taylor. Anthony, bring you into here, just jump in the conversation. As you were speaking, Atum, you talked about being welcomed back by people. And sometimes, because you feel, and because you feel, and that sometimes that feeling and that knowledge can be impeded by you opening your mouth, right? And so, as you said that, it just reminded me of one of my first times going to Jamaica to visit my grandfather for the first time. And I landed in Kingston and went to a cousin's house and told her that I was, asked her how to get up to the country up in Ocho Rios from Kingston. And she gave me, bus route, et cetera. But I remember, in fact, before I went to her house, when I landed at the airport in Kingston, I had just a couple of small pieces of luggage, didn't want to be, I was taking a bus to her house. I'd never been in Jamaica before, nor used public transportation, wasn't sure where I was going, but confident that I could get there. And I put my stuff in the locker, went outside, and I said, let me figure out how to get from where I am now at the airport to this address that I've got on paper here. And what I discovered is that as long as I stood there, relaxed, and relaxed is the word, and kept my mouth shut, I was like the other 1,000 people on that corner, on that street. And I saw them, I looked like them, I felt like them. But I discovered that the minute I opened my mouth, everything changed because I became the center of attention. That reminded me of another story, and that is that when my brothers, we came to Worthington, Minnesota from Kansas City. That's where I was born. My dad's job brought us to Worthington. And they lived there 10 years. I had moved on to Morehouse and then to the military and then back to here. But when they moved back to Kansas City, my young brothers, the last two of which brother and sister were born in Worthington, they went back to the neighborhood that we grew up in when I was a kid, black neighborhood, Kansas City. And the story I hear is, Brenda, I'll tell you this. My brothers went to probably Lincoln Junior High School, middle of the hood, and walking around first day of school. And then they probably said something like, hi, guys, like that. And the picture in my mind is that everything in the hallway
Went quiet.
Stand still. What? And hi, guys, being nice, right? The answer is empty your pockets. Give me your lunch money, because you're not from here. You coming from somewhere else, and you're not part of this. So the point is, being quiet and being alone means something. So anyway, it's a good, funny story. And I've got more like that, but all of it has to do with how do we figure out how do we be with each other and not be impeded by the adoption of tools and language that structurally creates a deficiency or a barrier to our fullness. Anthony, brother, how you doing, man? Good to see you as always. I'm loving talking to your mom. You know that.
I can't believe how much they look like twins. I was just blown away when Anthony came in. Oh my goodness. Beautiful, beautiful mother son.
And I think I told you last time you were here that Brenda and I were in kindergarten together in Kansas City. So we're both 75 now, and we both are in the same classroom in Kansas City.
Sitting on the floor, Mother Atum. We didn't have desks or books.
Yes. I do have to admit that I'm 79. And so Al, you're my junior.
It's nice to be a junior, Al, for a change.
That's right.
Angela always talks about my elders, and she.
Mother Atum, which is why my introduction was a way of asking permission.
Yes, thank you very much.
So, in the tradition, asking permission of the elders to proceed, yes. And thank you. Anthony, jump in here, brother. What's on your mind? What are you thinking about?
Actually, it's just great to listen to you all, because I think one of the things that I think when I'm talking, sometimes I feel like I think about the like you all's emergence as these college students, teenagers, late teen, and that there was that you all it was the moment of Pan-Africanism. It was the moment of discovering the idea of Africanness as part of your foundation, and wearing dashikis and tikis. That you all emerged in that moment, and then we kind of walked away from it.
Tie dye.
And right, and then it moved into tie dye, and it's just interesting thinking about the ways that the Black identity has been shaped since that moment. Like since you all were, I think you all emerged out of the '60s as the civil rights movement, the Black Arts movement, the movement into Black economic reality, because so much of the movement was driven by Black economics, So I think it's just interesting to hear you all talk about this again, right? That here you are making a commitment to an African way of being, an African way of seeing the world, a philosophy, and then the teachings of Kemet as African, right? Because that's one of the things that was very clear. They wanted to make sure Egypt was not part of Africa, right? And so I think that it's, like I said, it's just interesting to hear you all talk about it. And I think, for myself, for Batala, I think there's ways for us as adults now that was always there. Like it was always being kind of imprinted and planted in us in terms of just what our experiences were. So I think we kind of took it for granted. And I think now as we do the work and as I'm doing the work, I see the seeds, or I should say, I see the fruit of those seeds that were planted in me around this way of being. And so when you said it's more than bike riding or more than this, I think it absolutely is, because what we're really doing is we're trying to connect people to these activities, but we're doing it in a way that is always about community and connectedness and about culture.
Mm-hmm.
And it's never about the sport, never about the activity. And I think it's just something that is not always clear. And I think it's an important point of difference for us as we approach this, that there is a foundational Black way of knowing that makes these things more beneficial for us when we bring that way of embracing it. So
your work, it seems to me, Anthony, among other things, teaches us to reclaim our space, to see ourselves as sovereigns or as owners, as equity stakeholders in communities where we live, and to not see ourselves as bystanders or as marginalized, but rather to be the center of community, and that our activity is community-centered work that transforms, and that what you invite us to is to, even without saying those words, experience this process of transformation, which is not like a flash. It's an ongoing, incremental, step-by-step repetition of activity, of learning, of doing, of knowing. And I think that you accomplished that. And the context of your work that I see, and mine's only a limited view of what you do, Anthony, is in this marvelous work about how do we get our bodies and our minds focused on our relationship to the air, to energy, to exercise, to being and feeling healthy by engaging and using technology like bicycles, and technology like skateboards, and technology like snowshoes to be in the natural world, to appreciate it differently and to see our connection to it, not be strangers to the natural world, and therefore not be strangers to ourselves. You encourage people to get out of their car and walk through North Minneapolis or slow roll biking and discover a view of the neighborhoods we've lived in, but we've forgotten because we zip by in our automobiles. So that becomes our framework. But you say, look, take a minute, take a breath, stop, think, walk, breathe, and know yourself better by doing so. So I love that. And I salute you, Brother Anthony, for that kind of work. Sister Atum, I love talking to you about this idea of remembering, of the work of Asar Aset in remembering. And it reminds me of hearing our friend, Elder Mahmoud El-Kati, talk about the word remembering differently. And I've said this on this program several times, but when he said it once in one of our programs up at Lucille's Kitchen, talked about remembering. And he said, and the common understanding is, oh, I forgot my keys, let me remember. And he said, no, it's not just that. That's part of it. That's a small part of remembering. But what about remembering that which was dismembered? And you spoke about the dismembering of Asar, and the remembering of Asar as the work of Aset in the creation of, or the return to completion. So remembering takes on a new meaning, a new power. And remembering to me then means putting back the body that had been destroyed or disassembled or dismembered, and the creation, the recreation. So, I find that something that never ends. It's an appropriate point of examining the ways we've been disconnected, but also it's the right way to look at how we reconnect. What do you think, Sister Atum?
Well, I think first of all, let me say that there are a couple of things that is really sparking for me. Number one is that Anthony is my oldest son, firstborn, and that there is work that we have to do between and across generation to to really put ourselves in a position of understanding what our memories bring to the next generation. That we really do have to give more and more consideration to the memory as a container for both the resolved and the unresolved acts in our life. I think that once again, I think Komet talks a lot about the car, the memory of the car, the soul. That is really for us a study. So I'm very grateful that what the practical way that Anthony does this work about reconnecting to nature, about taking the history of experiences that we have had. This is where we have lived. We lived in this house for 40 years, over 40. So over 40 years in the same house, on the same block, there is very little connection that I have between myself and Lake Nokomis, or even between myself and the number of houses and homes and families that live in those houses and homes. So just imagine now the void that might be created in the kind of memory bank that we have, because we do not pursue knowing, and we do not pursue getting to know, and we do not pursue who are you and who are your people, and the fact that it matters. So because of the racialization of our existence, the racialization of our physical geographical location, there's a racialized nature to that has really kept us from creating memories, from opening up memories, from opening up the boundaries that we are afraid to cross. So this cycling, in one of the experiences with Slow Roll, what I had was an experience just recently, actually, of a European American man who is in a gathering on a regular basis with Anthony to build work around transportation and justice. And this man has purchased he was able to do some research, find a way and the money to buy this this three-wheeler, or this I don't, Anthony, what is it called? It's where he can actually ride the bike, I sit in the seat, and then we can ride around the neighborhood.
This is actually it's called a trishaw, or a three-wheeled rickshaw is what it is. And actually launching a program in North Minneapolis called Cycling Beyond Age, where we're going to use volunteers to actually take community members in the senior living facilities using a bike to the grocery store, or just for a ride. But again, this idea of increasing mobility, of getting them in nature, that and that we know that there is a significant impact in terms of the brain, in terms of physiology, when that happens, and also connectedness. And so this is two people doing it together, right?
Yes.
And really, so this is actually emerging out of a partnership with actually the Cultural Wellness Center, Cycling Beyond Age, and UROC. So another one of our community sisters, Makeda Zulu Gaspi, and us. And so we're really looking at this way is how are we using active living and describing it differently and promoting it. And the ultimate measure of impact is always connectedness. It doesn't matter. That's the cultural wellness approach says that whether we're working about health improvement or biking and mobility or transportation, that connectedness is always key to that experience and being
all about relationships.
Yeah.
Yes, but I think that the thing you take it back to is a part of segregation was just that. We were segregated, and in being segregated, we were isolated or put in specific locations and spaces and places where you couldn't go beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what you know when you study Africa is that people were not necessarily, quote unquote, segregated by racialized segregation, but within the context of tribal experiences and relationships, whatever the religion or whatever, there is a isolationist process that really keeps us from knowing who we are as it relates to the fullness of humanity and human beings. And so what we're able to do, once again, with the kind of going to bicycling for now, is we go that and we see this man drove up, actually up to UROC. We were at an event. He has this thing, and he of course asked me, could I take you for a ride? And I said, absolutely not. You cannot take me for a ride. Two reasons you can't take me for a ride is I just am not going to trust you taking me for a ride around this neighborhood. But you know what? The smile and the fact that I knew him from Anthony, I said, well, maybe it's not something I have to be afraid of. Mm-hmm. So listen to me. I don't have to be afraid. Not only don't I have to be afraid of where he's going to take me, but I also don't have to be afraid of who he is because of the connection that we have had. Mm-hmm. I remembered his spirit, his energy, his contribution to what we were trying to create. So the memory and the remembering and the keeping of those memories in place so they can inform and infuse our spiritual connection now, as well as our geographical and physical and racial, or what we call cultural connection. All of that is built into this remembering, Brother Al. So I'm working to heal the memory. Mm-hmm. I'm working to develop the process to heal the memorializing of our death, the memorializing of the killing of the Black man and woman that happens on a regular basis. And the way we do that, once again, is by opening that wound, opening it up, moving about in such ways that we can reconnect to an existence and an endurance that all of us will actually know.
In game, Mother Atum, how do you see that evolving? And I think in game is an inappropriate phrase because there is none, but the evolution that we are experiencing, how do you describe that? What are the best ways of analyzing, looking at, talking about it from where you stand right now?
You said in game.
I said end game. I mean, what is the
end game? What is the
end game? And as I said that, I also said that's inappropriate. It's inappropriate.
Well, other ways to say it, the bottom line, where are we headed? What, so forth. In terms of.
And let me say this: I have a little life chart on my wall upstairs for me and Bobby, and the bottom of the page says some just family, personal life goals, but the footnote at the bottom of the first page says ... before the beginning, and at the other side of the page it says ... after the end. And that's my frame of reference of how do we see things from before what we call the beginning and from beyond what we call the end. So therefore no end game, but how do we analyze where we are on the continuum?
Well, I would go back to my relationship with my sons. I honestly know that they called me to be their mother. I do know that. And that what is important right now is that I'm aware of what we pass on generation to generation. And the African, remember now, the ancestral, the connection that we have to Creator and creation is one that talks about life and death being one end of the same spectrum. Mm-hmm. That it's really the beginning and the end is connected in ways that at this point in time, I think we can begin to understand very well. That the agape idea, the God spell idea, is that we are spellbound by the beauty in creation. We are spellbound by the beauty in creation. Our message, just walking the planet, is in itself a healing message for that which has gone before us and for that which comes after us. And that's a basic teaching of our spirituality. So our ancestors built into this life cycle, our cycles of life. Some people, people have all kinds of words for it. But this return is a continuation of life as it began from the beginning. Our people call it from the first time. From the beginning of time. We continue that process going through our way of giving and receiving the generations that go before us, the generation that come after us. It's not a little thing to say to the elder, may I speak, or may I start. It's not a little thing for those of us who are elders to say to the ancestors, I am grateful to you, for you, with you, for our connection to the Creator. I have nothing to ask for, only to acknowledge for all that has come through us. Does that make sense? So that's the in terms of the beginning, the end, or the end game. The African thinks of things, we as people think of things through, once again, the philosophy, the wisdom of our experiential relationship with God, with the Creator, with the divine in creation.
This is a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, Mother Atum Asahir and Brother Anthony Taylor. I want to spend the last few minutes, if you have events or activities or projects that you want people to take note of or to participate in, or things you want people to read or hear or watch on TV or whatever, are there opportunities for people to connect? Mother Atum, maybe I'll start with you, and then Brother Anthony, I know you always have something going on that people can come to.
Well, let me just start by saying we are fortunate to be having the 13th in the evening at Penumbra. We have a group of 50 Black women coming together to attend Weathering. And we have an opportunity to discuss, in partnership with Penumbra team. They're building a healing, their idea of a healing institute, cultural healing. And so we're doing that together, and we're extremely grateful to be able to do that. That's an event that I believe we probably have a full house, but for our night. But it's happening at Penumbra, and I would encourage people to attend.
Well,
Anthony.
Yeah. So that actually is going to be a great event, the Weathering event. So, we are. The one thing I'd love for people to keep on their calendar is that Phyllis Wheatley, which many people know, is a legacy African American led and serving organization, is actually reopening an outdoor camp. Phyllis Wheatley has owned a camp since 1957. And the camp closed a little more than 20 years ago. And so on October 20th, we're doing a gathering where we want people to come tell their story. We, as you said, are really working to reclaim a narrative that about outdoors, it includes Black people for millennia, that we really have a deep relationship to nature. Nature offers us a deep opportunity for healing, and that we have an ongoing relationship. So Phyllis Wheatley on October 20th at Phyllis Wheatley Center is doing an event where we're asking community members who went to the camp between 1960 and 2000, who probably all have children now. We've identified many community members then in their 60s and 70s that have these amazing memories of camp. So we're doing an event on October 20th at 5 p.m. at Phyllis Wheatley Center, which is our Reclaiming Outdoors. and telling the stories of Camp Catherine Parsons of Phyllis Wheatley. And they can go to phylliswheatley.org for more information on that. And but it is a free event. It's an event to celebrate people's long-standing relationship to outdoors as a space for youth development, family development, human development, and healing. And so we look forward to, we'll be working on that October 20th.
Awesome. Brenda, any thoughts? I'm going to go back to Mother Atum to close the program, but any questions or thoughts, Brenda, before we move towards the
Mother Atum, I was just sitting up here thinking about when Al and I were growing up, and we were growing up in segregated neighborhoods. Did you feel isolated? I didn't. There were just certain things that we couldn't do. I was always angry about not being in the Easter parade because I thought that I was really sharp. But anyway, but I had to think of one thing, and then I'll let it go. But I was thinking the efforts that they are making to grab our souls. And some of us are rolling in to their little traps. And I think about how strong we were and our parents were in what we went through in growing up. But there was this glass shield where we could be protected, but we could also see through, observe, and figure out how we were going to go from A to B to C. And we had the church sitting there with us.
Yes.
That's gone in many respects.
Yes.
So, but they're making a concerted effort to get to us, to get to here. I think of Ketanji when they attacked her, and just these efforts of saying, we fear your resilience. We fear the descendancy of those scholars in the desert that has gone for centuries, that fear, and they're just wanting to get to that heart and soul. But boy, some of us are seasoned warriors, Mother too.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Well, I just would say that the story of that whole thing with Sister Judge Ketanji, that to me is a great example of our beauty, our steadfastness, our amazing grace. And so to me, that's the story. How did she do that? Beautiful. Well, she did it because there were so many mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers who were standing there saying to her, girl, let me tell you who you are. Let me tell you what you are supposed to do. This proprietary positioning that comes from Ma'at, from the teachings of Ma'at, says you hold yourself in such a way that they will never know what you think or what you feel. And that knowledge is supposed to be kept sacred, and sometimes it's talked about as secret. But you come home to your mama, you come home to your grandmother, and you sit here, and we don't even have to use words for me to tell you how powerful you were today and how powerful you will be tomorrow if you stay still and peaceful and avoid reacting to those things which come from the outside. It is the inside which is where God comes from. That's the voice that you hear internal. The outside voice is not the voice that's going to tell you where to go and what to do. And for that, we can be grateful.
Well, listen, what a wonderful conversation. What a wonderful time of being together. I'm going to do in the tradition an exit, sort of leaving the way we came in. And by that, I mean, Mother Atum, I'll turn to you to close this conversation with thoughts, feelings, words.
I just want to be grateful to let everyone know how grateful I am to be a woman of African descent. I am deeply honored to be the mother of Anthony, Joffrey, Robert, and Nevin. I am doubly, triply honored to be an elder in this community, as named by you, and a teacher of the Kemetic tradition, certified by the Akefren community, Seba Kemed's presentation, and having on my wall a certification that says that I am qualified to be an opener of the mouth. For this, I am grateful. I thank all that have been involved with. Thank you so much. And I continue to really want to live up to your expectations as a Black elder, mother, woman, sister. Hotep, everyone.
With that, we say thank you for listening. Thank you for being with us. Share this conversation. Come back, check it out again, sit in it for a while. I think there's value here. There's power here. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.